2,000-foot overcast ceilings. That's a dense layer of stratocumulus associated with cold air advection coming back behind a cold front that passed yesterday. And there it goes off into the Gulf, back to the northwest. Northwesterly flow coming in, bringing in fresh incursion of cold air down from the high plains. And most of this is driven by this 1038 millibar high over Idaho. So we're getting this very large divergent flow across much of the western U.S. Elsewhere around the country, we have this stagnant high-pressure area over the Carolinas. Temperatures mostly in the 30s, 40s, and low 50s in that part of the country, and looking up to the north. No cold air coming down, really. Maybe a little bit from the Hudson Bay area, but obviously that's going to cycle eastward into Ontario and Quebec. Then, looking way up there in the Arctic, the true Arctic air is locked up there in the northern islands. Temperature's not really that cold for that region. Teens, and only up here you go below zero. And in fact, in the Mackenzie River Valley around Yellowknife, it is very, very warm for this time of year. Lots of above freezing conditions, and even up there near Inuvik, well, that's a little bit east of there, maybe Coppermine, somewhere in there, 32 degrees. However, the cold air is going to be back in force pretty soon. And you can see that little change there from 39 north of Whitehorse down to 28 around Dawson, and then back down to the teens around Fairbanks. So now that we have a much better picture of what's happening, let's look at the upper level chart. We've got a continued split flow pattern, the strongest jet stream energy way out there in the Pacific. Main branch of it coming onshore near Yukon, going way up there into the Arctic, and then back down into the Great Lakes. And that puts most of the central U.S. under the split flow pattern right there, a vortex over Wichita, Kansas, and the flow 100 knots around the periphery of that low. So what is it like to be under that vortex right there? What would you see if you were out there in Wichita? Well, before we answer that question, let's adjust the charts up to the afternoon hours, bring that up to about 2021 Z. And looking right there around Wichita, it actually looks like we're looking more towards Springfield, Missouri. That's where the vortex is, and it kind of extends down as a trough. Maybe another low right there south of Deming, New Mexico. But let's focus on this area right there. Now we can start out with a forecast skew-t and just sample the middle of that vortex. Well, it looks like a very deep cold air mass. The top's right about there. And I think what we're seeing is just kind of a large pile of cold air down in the lowest 10,000 feet. Above that, that looks like just regular mid-latitude air. If you bring that down almost adiabatically, kind of like that, you get kind of a mild 50s to 55 degree temperatures at the surface. So that's not exactly very frigid air in the mid and upper levels. And if we look at that area on the surface chart, yeah, it's kind of cold in that area, mid 30s temperatures, but you can see it's warm up to the north. Mid 40s in South Dakota and Nebraska, and mid 40s down to the south. So it's actually this pool of cold air right there that is supporting the upper level troughing. And then looking at the visible satellite imagery, not a whole lot to see. Lots of low cloud, and really to differentiate the mid and upper cloud from the low cloud, we need to be looking at infrared. So there's the infrared, kind of a dull gray color. So yeah, this is mostly low cloud. I do see a little bit of higher cloud, maybe right in here. Let me see if I can tease those details out a little bit with one of the other channels. Yeah, I brought up the day cloud phase over here on the left side at College DuPage. Yeah, there it is right there. That distinguishes the clouds a little bit more. So there's a little bit of moisture, maybe up near 10,000 feet, not much above that. And up here, I think that's a little bit of snow cover out around Dodge City, Elkhart, all the way back to La Junta. And if you're just looking at still shots, you can see how that can be a little bit confusing. That's the snow cover right there. If we animate that, it doesn't move. And it kind of reveals some of the terrain beneath it, some of the valleys and creeks and so on. And it's really that phase product that distinguishes that from this cirrus and stratocumulus to the east. To break down things further, let's look at the isobars and thickness. The thickness lines down here, you can see the gradient has shifted all the way down into Mexico and the Gulf Coast region. So obviously our front is well to the south down in this area here, and the warm front extending just south of New Orleans. North of that, we've got the occlusion running up towards Arkansas. So the center of the cold air across northern Oklahoma up to Minnesota or Missouri and down to New Mexico. So running that forward, we can see that open wave, it has not really developed down there south of Louisiana. It tracks northeastward. Now we start seeing a little bit of indication of it closing off in Alabama tomorrow. And then going into Friday evening, some good development right there in northeastern Georgia. And then it continues off towards Washington, D.C. and New York. So we get kind of a miniature winter system. It looks like the GFS has brought back a little bit of snow there to Albany, down to Kingston, and up towards Springfield and southern New Hampshire. So that's a little bit of a surprise there. And the strong pressure gradient, it's going to be a little bit windy there early Saturday across parts of the Northeast. And there it goes off into the Canadian Maritimes, and that leaves us with kind of a cool and quiet weather pattern for the weekend. Things coming together out to the west. There's our new frontal boundary. You can see that blob of cold air there across Oregon. And let's see what happens with that. Yeah, that shifts down into Nevada and Utah. That's the leading edge right there. So a bit of a cool down for the Las Vegas area. And not much sign of it after that. Maybe a little bit of a reinforcement towards Thursday, and that develops a little bit further. And we'll wait till maybe next week to see what's going to happen around mid-month. Okay, that'll do it for this edition of Forecast Lab. Thanks for joining, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.